Shifty is particularly fond of the Sudan card. And there's a reason why. Because what's going on in the Sudan, which is in large measure a result of black opportunists caught in the Obama mold, is very like what they have going at UW Dialectical in the Black Power. We understand the streets honcho stuff. Now they can pull a honcho. They could Lee Harvey Oswald be and just tell their fibs. But presuming an educated person takes on the framework that Seattle has offered and puts into perspective with a call for representing the interest, the human interest of civilians in global society. Even in American society, civilians are at risk because of the showmanship of the media combine that took place. And you're supposed to elevate Barack Obama, for example, who's nothing more than a Johnny Cochran for Reagan. The details are kept under wraps about what happened. They trace back to Fayum, a counterfeiting den. And it's a terribly sad laughter that it summons my psyche and my soul to be told that the lies that you've given your word to lie for Reagan. Tracing back to a counterfeiting den at the turn of the 20th century. I really have to get the better of my mirth in that. Because what they did was military sociology, creep variation. Now, scholarship, there's a man who corrected himself. I mean, he did open the books on the question of whether Hezbollah was in on the Motorola pager attack. That he corrected himself. He was saying Hamas was distributing pagers. Well, wait a minute. Hezbollah isn't Hamas. Well, I don't know the Hezbollah's relationship with the Muslim Brotherhood or Arab Spring. I haven't researched it that carefully. I know they are called the Axis of Resistance, and they have not told the truth about what was done to the Rave and Gaza, nor have they ever called for the arrest of Gail Burslem. So they could be an Islamo functionary of the grand manipulation of the insider corrupt oligarch tycoon sorcery going on behind the scenes in this racket that's going on in the world game, which involves the Beatles coming to the rescue of recovery systems by singing songs, the Ouspensky outcome of the fourth dimensional Superman program that John Lennon was enlisted in, that I have researched and brought about excavation of in semiotic systems. Now, Reagan and his team is still at large. There's a widespread gospel about him having been shot by Hinckley, but I was there, and the circumstances under which I was there raised questions about that, which aren't aired because Obama doesn't want them aired. Because Obama realizes that when they're aired, it's going to show up his alliance with Reagan, put on a production studio show. It's showmanship. And it shows that the semiotic storyline of the Burson script, which traces back to the mysterious cabinet in Hollywood in Fayum, the Italian futurist mob, implicates John Lennon in pulling a Houdini. That's what it does. That's not what I say it does. That's what it does. That's why they don't want anybody talking. And they can pull a, honcho routine. Get some chick saying, oh, he, wronged a lady of the night, and make a Berlin Alexanderplatz ending in Tacoma, you know, big container variety. But that's not something they should be playing up as though it's legitimate. But they have these episode schools of thought. I'll give you an example. MK Ultra is in vogue right now. Congress is having a hearing about it. Well, everybody raises their hand. I have an MK Ultra hearing story that needs to be aired. So they say Jimmy's daddy was in the CIA, which he may have been. He was from Bush's ship in the Navy. And even though the Green Party Combine left their calling card on his obituary, he was in the loop of the people who pulled this. That may be. It may have been friendly fire. I don't know. But it's a distraction. And it's qualifies as an episode, a wrangling, to avoid the military sociological question that is advanced by more careful study. Now, the reason I mentioned the fact check of Hamas and Hezbollah is because some people will stand by their errors and brush them off because people don't respect fact checking anymore. This man checked his fact, and I was grateful for that. I have tried to check this fact. I've gone through every library book in the Carnegie Oakland branch pertaining to JFK's assassination, looking for J. Edgar Hoover and Dickey DeLoach in the index. Somewhere at some time, I believe I crossed paths with Dickey DeLoach saying, after King is gone, we need to find a black man more amicable to our interests. And I never succeeded in finding the attribution I can cite to Dickey DeLoach. It may have been someone else, I suppose. But the idea of it is something that you can easily get your mind around. And the way that they play this structure, since Reagan is still at large, he's still boss, the Kennedys won't stand up to him. They have a letter from them thanking me for my concern for their family, but one of them is in the Toon administration. I mean, I am not out to be enlisted or conscripted into this war game. I loved JFK and I love my peers, and I feel obligated to tell them the truth. I love my school. I'm a Pam File, so to speak, a pamphlet file. I just have this excavated semiotic research booklet, search books. But I'm not going to subscribe to the idea of donating everything to the people who did it. Now, what they do is they say that not the people who are implicated by cryptology. And you could say, well, if Josh Shapiro is forging Jimmy Carrey's name on his bombs, what's stopping the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette from forging Nosferatu's name on their cryptology? Nothing. But it doesn't look like that's what happened, but it's possible that it happened. But the people who are implicated by the cryptology, for which Nosferatu's gang has covered up, that's to be noted. He didn't raise his hand and say, Jimmy, let me help you figure out what happened to your father. It was him, Don, who's Donald? Who's the most prominent Donald? Ono, and who? Like who the cast of color. Green Party, German Green Party, it says injecting people. Now, these are all mostly white people and Japanese people, but aha, the black man comes riding down on his white stallion and says, I am the black man. And if you cross this line in the sand of Bush, you will cross Tiki Deloach and insult the black warrior. And this is their magical mystery tribute to the black man because they found what a black man who's more amiable to their interests than Martin Luther King was. And that's how it's structured to allow these Hollywood mystifiers, creating episodes to wrangle by, to pull a honcho and say none of that happened, and they literally sit there while a deaf man is mutilated. To say nothing of how hard it is to establish any kind of fraternity in my society, my local society. I try to cooperate with basic civil decencies. There's a guy who I personally think is an interesting person. He wears a Reagan hat. You're not supposed to do politics, so I don't talk to him about it. To the senior, I don't talk to him. I went and said, I'll go get a therapist to discuss my tears of sorrow and suffering and anxiety and trauma concerning Gaza so that I don't darken the environment of people who may disagree with me. I've said that I'm not at war with Israel personally. And I've done my level best to engage legitimate channels of law enforcement. Now, there are people who cut those wires, sure, because I'm dealing with Hollywood. Hollywood is the third temple of Zion at this point. It's a gigantic finagle. But the basic civil decencies are still the same. I'm the same person. I'm writing poetry. I'm in love with my fellow poet. And I care to see my point of view recognized. I understand that these people who I admire so much, my heart went out to Greta, Thiago, the Freedom Flotilla, are people who do not share my primary interest in establishing the semiotic manuscript that was sent to me that forged my name on an atrocity. Forged my name. They don't have the same interest in that. They could easily accept that John Lennon pulled a Houdini. Nobody got the better of it, so they might as well go along with it because they believe in recovery work. I believe in recovery work, and it's very intoxicating to look at that point of view. Everybody lives without recognition by Ringo Starr. Everybody does. Nobody gets recognized by Ringo Starr. And so they'll say, well, Ringo Starr will recognize you if you play ball with Reagan. It's like you're jeopardizing your own grip on reality when you say that, because that's not what's going to happen. I don't make deals with counterfeiting dens. I report counterfeiting dens to the police. Do you see the difference between a person who forgets or can't return a library book and one who rips off rare books to make millions of dollars? Of course you don't, because you got your hands in the pockets of the man who's ripping off the museums. And you've beaten senseless the deaf man who misplaces a library book because he's so absent-minded from neurology tampering and trauma and beatings. Now, Greta and Thiago have invested in recovery systems. They see a human cause, a humanity, an international human rights movement in Shifty's abuse of the Sudan episodes. But the gold diggers in the Sudan are like the gold diggers in the Obama regime who sell the idea that I'm trying to exploit the grief of the dead widow in the matter of John Lennon. It has nothing to do with the truth. I could belabor that question over and over. People say to me, why don't you talk to them about it? I'm not the one who's not talking with people. I'm not the one who has hardened my heart or locked my door. These are people who locked me in the house from the inside with men who tortured me. These are basically criminals ripping off the museums and abusing their authority in the name of our society and the purposes of our strategies for recovery and protecting of civilians and the belief and the faith that good begets good. But I will, so I don't really want to do that, but I will. I had the slightest idea, none, that any of this had to do with John Lennon, Yoko Ono, or virginity or anything like that. What I was investigating was the confusion of a generation who was smacked in the kisser with the AIDS sudden death, not knowing what was going on, how to find loyalty to each other, how to adjust to the new norms. What did it mean for the future? That's where I was. That can be confirmed if anybody wanted to. I put up the poem Raft of the Medusa. Nothing to do with Leslie Katz and Yoko Ono, John Lennon, and Two Virgins Pussy Ball. They lowered that as a grid because for them, that's what it meant. And the black man, he's puffed up when it comes to his sexual identity. That's a gruesome factor of his conscious conditioning. That can't be naysayed. I'm not the one going around castrating people. I'm not the one doing it. I'm not the one doing it. Not. And they don't care that that's true because they're playing a military sociology game where the white dummy will do to deceive people in an episode that allows them to silence a witness by using trauma, at least, or taking hostage someone who he dearly loves, or by threatening someone, the sort of thing that gangsters do. I mean, they're not the sort of thing, this is something you should get in your heads. Clint Eastwood is involved in this stuff. He's not the man he portrays, the good guy in his movies. He's the one pulling this stuff.